for the next 10 weeks, so I hope you come back and hang out, and we're going to talk about tools and techniques that we need to play good blues. And obviously this is all stuff that filters down into just about every genre of music and will basically help to make you a better player all around. But in terms of this course and what we're going to be doing, we're going to apply it to the blues and so we can become better blues players, have better technique, better time, know some nice little tricks to do that are important, things that you need to know. We're going to look at, for the first couple of weeks here, we're going to look at the idea of rhythm guitar. We're going to talk about some of the most essential parts that you need to know to play good blues rhythm guitar, because if you can't play rhythm guitar, nobody's going to want to play with you, because you got to know what to do when you're not playing a solo. So, and there's a text. Okay, will do. Jason, I got that. So we're going to talk about rhythm guitar. We're going to talk about some of the essential parts, how to play them. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about how to play them, what they are, where they come from, how to embellish them so we don't sound real square when we're playing, and things like that. And we've got a good track to work with and demonstrate, and there's some tablature written up here, and I will explain what that is as we get into it. Next week we're going to talk about essential chord voicings that you need to know for playing good blues. Your dominant sevenths, your ninth chords, things like that. And as we get into everything, as we progress, we're gonna every week we're gonna learn something new that's going to help us improve our abilities to play. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to get into the importance of arpeggios, which is something that I was taught, and I'm going to bring it to you to talk about why it's important to know your arpeggios. I'm going to show you what the important good arpeggios are to know. Boy, they're working like crazy outside of my apartment. The good arpeggios to know when you're soloing, that you need to know how to mix those arpeggios with the scale tones. And basically, when we get to that point, we're gonna get away from the idea of thinking about scales, because when all you do is think about scales, that's how you play. And then a couple of months later, you're walking around going, well, I know I'm bored. I don't know what else to do. I know all my pentatonic patterns, and what I always say to people is, well, do you know your arpeggios? And 9 times out of 10 they say no. And then as soon as I start to play and I show them how to incorporate the arpeggios with scale tones, then the light goes. That's your big aha moment right there. So we're going to get into that, and I'm going to talk about the importance of knowing your arpeggios, how to learn them, how to practice them. And eventually how to apply them to what you know. And we're going to get into some different scale things and some different options much later on, after you've had a few weeks to digest everything. And I'll be here to take your questions today for a little while, so if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in. And that's it, so let's get down to business. Is the first blues rhythm that I ever learned. And where does it come from, and why is it important? Well, it comes from Chicago blues, which is basically what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about learning how to play good Chicago blues parts. Things that are common to Chicago blues, that the guitar players, people like Hubert Sumlin, Jimmy Rogers, who was Muddy Waters' guitar player, fantastic guitar player, a very inventive guy, a guy who came up with different parts that nobody else was doing at that time, because he was playing with Muddy and another guitar player and him, so that's 3 guitar players, and they got to blend together like this. So he always came up with some really cool stuff. This, of course, has that Jimmy Reed feel. You know, you got me running, you got me hiding, that kind of thing. So that really is like the Jimmy Reed basic part. And then there's another thing that Chicago blues players will do when they play, and that's dropping some chords in a very rhythmic manner. That's just as rhythmic as this. They might do 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's built off of a chordal thing, a very simple triad. And that's just a very simple triad at the 5th fret with G on the 4th string, C sharp on the 3rd string at the 6th fret, and E on the 2nd string at the 5th fret. So we're going from A7 to a, technically it's actually a D over A. It's a D chord with an A in the bass, but it's a D triad that reads A, D, F sharp at the 7th fret, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. Then we come back to this. But I'm going to go back and we're going to take that apart and do that again. Then there's another part that we're going to work on today. If you want to refer to the tab, if you want to put the tab up now, you can do that. And this is you heard me mention a guitar player named Jimmy Rogers. Jimmy Rogers was really a great player. Interesting soloist, but as even an equally inventive rhythm guitar player. Like I said, when he was playing in Muddy Waters' band, there was the classic Muddy Waters lineup, which had Otis Spann, Little Walter, might have been Francis Clay on drums. I can't remember. Forgive me for that. And I forget who the other guitar player would have been. But there was Muddy on guitar, another guitar player, and Jimmy Rogers. So you got Muddy playing. You got the other guy playing, and Jimmy Rogers many times would grab a part that mirrors what the bass player is doing. The bass player could be going, or if the bass player was going, which is the bass part I'm going to play for you on this track that we have here. He would, in a way, mirror what the bass was playing. And when I say mirror, I don't mean that he copied it, but he was kind of, I think maybe a better word would be kind of shadowing what he was doing. And Jimmy Rogers would do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Was you heard a part that was working really nice with the bass, but had its own little movement. And of if I wanted to break it down to what the intervals are, well, it's the root, the flat third, up to the flat 4 or the flat 6, to the 4, to the 5, the 7. Let's take that 4 out of there. Excuse me, that's the third, the chord, pardon me. Flat third to the major third to the 5th to the 7th to the root. If you're looking on the tab, you'll see it's written on the first page of the tablature. It's a single note line in eighth notes, and they're swung eighth notes. They're not. It's not Peter Gunn. It's swung eighth notes like a blues. So let me put the track on for you, and you can hear exactly what I played. And then we're going to talk about it a little bit more and show you exactly how to do it. So here you go. You're going to hear all three of those guitar parts together. Playing the single note line right now. Here's the chord. Here's the first part. Real steady. So that's the rhythm. And we're going to listen to that again and we'll play along with it. Excuse my big forehead right there. But let's go through these parts. Okay. How's that? Is that better, Jason? Just trying to... This is my first class doing this streaming, so I'm trying to work the bugs out here. All right, so let me talk for a second about why this is so important. Why is this so important? Because your job as the rhythm player is to keep time with the bass player and the drummer, and give the singer or whoever the soloist is at that point a good solid foundation. And I see we've got a question here. How do you keep something simple interesting? Well, that's a really good question, and I'll tell you how you keep it interesting. You have to realize the importance of what it is that you're doing by keeping the time, playing in the groove, and supporting whoever else is playing a solo. Or if nobody's playing a solo and there's somebody singing and you're playing with 3 or 4 other people, well, what are you going to do? You've got to play something simple that blends in and is supportive to your bass player, your drummer, your keyboard player, if there's another guitar player, or if there's a singer and he's playing harmonica. Your job at that point has to be something that's considered very selfless. In other words, it's not about you. It's about the part that you're playing. That's how you keep it interesting. And you have to, that's a different mindset. That's a different mindset. And in all of my years as a player, and having done a ton of session work in my life, you learn that at some point it's not about you. It's about what you're doing to support the other musicians that you're playing with. And in terms of playing blues and what we're talking about here today, we're strictly talking about being a great rhythm guitar player, being a great support unit, being part of the rhythm section. And I don't really know, I can play solos, I can play solos for days, like plenty of guys, okay? But what I really love is that feeling of sitting in the pocket with a great bass player and drummer and a keyboard player, to where that stuff is just locked in so tight. By the time you come up to play a solo, you're not really thinking anymore about what it is you're going to play. You kind of get to the point where you sort of feel it, because you've been playing rhythm now for countless bars. Maybe the singer was singing a couple of verses, maybe the keyboard player took a solo, now the singer's going to sing again, and maybe the singer plays harmonica and he's going to play a solo, and then he turns around and says guitar. Well, now it's your turn, and you've been doing all this support work. Okay, you've been doing all of this support work for everybody else around. Believe me, you've got a really good grip by now of what this is supposed to feel like. So by the time you come up to play something, it's probably going to have a nice feel to it. It's going to have some character, and it's going to have more to do with what everybody else is playing. And it's going to have a little bit a deeper meaning, because you've been thinking about playing this groove and dealing with the rhythmic aspects of the music you're playing. So that's my answer to how do you keep something interesting. You have to change your mindset. You have to change your mindset, and you have to realize that at the end of the day, it's not about you until you get to play. Until you get to play a solo, it's about everybody else and everything else that's going on. And that's how you have to. That's the key to being successful as a good rhythm guitar player. So that's my question. I got a question here. I don't do hybrid picking. It's not. All I know about it is using my pick and my second finger. And the only exercise that I ever did, and I'm going to do this real quick, and then we're going to go back to the subject, was to get some sort of more of a country chicken picking kind of feel. I would play 4 notes at a time chromatically with the pick, then my finger. As far into hybrid picking as I go. I'm not much into it. I'm really not. I'm not into it, and I'm not a fan of it, and it's not something that I practice. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't help you with that. But anyway, let's get back to the business at hand here. Let's take apart this very first part. Okay, part number 1. This is one of the most essential parts. They're all essential parts, excuse me. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting the palm of my hand, I'm letting it rest on the bridge, and I'm using all downstrokes to play root 5, A and E. And then I'm going to move over to the 5th and the 4th string, back to the 5th and the 4th, the 6th and the 5th. Then for the 5 chord, I'm going to be on the 5th and the 4th string at the 7th and the 9th fret. And that's on the tab. If you want to pull the tab up, you can refer to that. That would be the first 12 measures at the top of page 1. You'll see the chords written above, the chord symbols A7, D7, and E7. But below you're going to see this figure. If you listen to the way I'm doing it, I've got kind of a rubbery kind of snap to it. That's how I hear it. I hear it as a very kind of sound. Play along with me. Let's play along together. If you got your guitar in your hands, I assume you do. We'll play it nice and easy. I'm going to give you the time. A 1, 2. A 1, 2, 3, 4. If you need to. Alright, now that's that part. Now, let's talk about that part again, and let's look at some of the different ways that it's played. We're going to call that the basis for the part. That's the root of it. That's the core of this idea of rhythm. Okay, that's that. Now, there are times you're going to hear, you might hear it on a Jimmy Reed record, you might hear it on a Howlin' Wolf record when you hear Hubert Sumlin play. You might hear them do with open strings, playing it down here open, with open A, and then E. Now they might do it not quite as muted, so you actually hear a little bit more tonality and more decay of the chord. Less decay, rather. Okay? Or they might play it in a single note, back and forth kind of manner, like this. So that's another variation on the same idea. It's basically the same idea, only we're embellishing it. I think of it as embellishment. Just sort of changing it around, doing it a little different. Now, naturally, what you have to do at this point is you have to use your judgment as to when to do that. And is it working? Is it working with the way the rest of the band feels? This piece of music, what we're talking about here is your basic Chicago blues shuffle. That's what we're talking about, to answer your question. It's just your basic Chicago shuffle 101, how to play a shuffle. And there are lots of things to do in a shuffle, and we're going to certainly get into more of them, but that's that idea and that's that part. If you've ever heard the great classic song Honky Tonk, this is how it starts. That's how far, and Honky Tonk was considered a rock and roll hit. So, and we know that, the blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll. So that's how these parts are all hinged together. This is where they all come from. This is where they all live. All right. Let's take this rhythm part, because this may be the most difficult to learn. And 1, 2, 3, 4. That first note is a pickup. So if you were counting 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's on the end of 3. And we're going to come in and we're going to play. We're going to play a part. This would be the last 12 bars of the transcription, and I wrote in some repeat signs. You're going to see some repeat signs there, and also says play this for 2 measures. Now move this figure up to this position. Play it here, because it's much easier to think of it in those terms. So I didn't want to cloud things and make things more difficult to understand. We're going to take this pattern, we're going to move it up to this chord. It's the same pattern, only and the same fingering, only we're just moving it up the neck. That's how we're going to look at this. So let's look at the 1 chord, which would be A7. And it's basically off of this A triad right there, which is A on the 4th string, 7th fret, C sharp, which is on the 3rd string, 6th fret, and then E, which is on the 2nd string, 5th fret. Now we're not going to play that A chord, we're going to play A7. In other words, we're going to take this A and forget it, and we're going to move it down to the 5th fret. So we've got G, C sharp, and E. In other words, that's an A chord with no root in it. There's no A in there. The only time we're going to hit the root is on the pickup of the phrase. So hang with me here. It's the pickup of the phrase. So we're going to go A, then we're going to grab this triad of G, C sharp, and E, and we're going to hammer onto the C sharp, which is the 3rd string. So you're hammering down to that 6th fret. Then you're going to grab the D triad right there. There's my little Mel Bay fingering right there. At the 7th fret, and that's that's A, D, and F sharp, which is a D triad. 2nd inversion for those of you that are keeping score. And come back. So let's play that real slow. Like that. 1, 2, 3. And 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now that's the figure that we're going to play. And we're going to play that over the 1 chord, which is A7. We're going to play that over the 4 chord, which is D7. And then we're going to play it over the 5 chord, which is E7. But where are we going to play it? Well, we're going to play it. We're going to play it for the 1 chord. We're going to play it at the 5th and the 6th fret. That's where we are. So basically, we're in the 5th position at the 5th fret. Now, when we get to the 4 chord, which is D7, that's D7. We're going to move this all the way up to the 10th and the 11th fret. Okay? Same pickup note on the same string. There's the root of D7, D right there at the 12th fret, 4th string. Back down. Now, when we get up to measure 9, we're going to go to the 5 chord, which is E7. We're going to grab E, which is at the 14th fret on the 4th string. That's 14th fret, 4th string. And play the figure. Then come down to the 12th and the 10th fret. Then back down here. Alright, let's play it slow. I hope you're all with me out there. We're going to do it real slow. Oh, 1, 2, oh, 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. We're going to grab the turnaround, which is F7 to E7. Alright, let's do it again. Alright? Hopefully you're getting it. Just relax with it. You know, it's not something that's supposed to feel nervous. It's supposed to groove. If it's got a little bit of lope when the track is playing, that's totally fine. That's normal, just as long as you're not so far behind it that you sound like you're dragging, or you're so far in front of it and you're rushing and it sounds like it's tomorrow morning already. So you want to make sure that you stay in the pocket, you know, nice and easy. Let's do it again. We'll do it same tempo. Oh, 1, 2. Oh, 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. Let's do it one more time, and then we're going to go after that single note line, because that's got more notes in it. Alright, let's play it again. We're going to bump the tempo up just a couple of clicks. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 3. Alright? I hope you got that. Let's move on to part number 2, which comes after the first 12 bars on page 1 of the PDF. So this is a single note line. This is that Jimmy Rogers part that I was telling you about. So in essence, at this point, you kind of become the second bass player. Only you're not playing down in the register of the bass because you're playing the guitar, so you're an octave or two above what the bass is doing. So let's take a look at this line. Now before we do it, any of you who have ever come to my Q&A or know me from JamPlay, you know, I will demonstrate things and then I get accused. They say, well, you're changing it. No, I'm not changing it. I'm embellishing it. I'm playing it in the spirit of the way guitar players, the way musicians play things. You know, you have a part, you find out what that part is, you get locked into it, and then you might add a note here, you might subtract a couple of notes here, you might rest for a quarter, an eighth note before you come back in, you might drop a triplet in here. But it's still, in the grand scheme of things, it's still the same part. It's still, in essence, the same thing that I started to play when we started to play this in the first place. So that's how you have to look at it. It has a loose, ultimately, it has a looseness to it. Now, if you listen to the MP3 that I've done, the track that I've done here, you're going to hear it, and you're going to hear me staying very, very close to what the transcription is saying, which is this. And that's more or less what the transcription is saying. But we're going to go through the nuts and bolts of it so you can get a feel for what it is. And after you've played it, a couple of thousand times, I don't mean that literally, but after you've played it a lot and you get a good feel for what these notes are and how they work with the harmony that's being introduced by the root 5, because you've got a minor third and a major third, which is common to playing blues. Okay, these are intervals that are common to playing blues. Using the minor, this is one of the only genres where the minor third and the major third kind of coexist with each other. Against a dominant chord. So once you learn you see what's on the transcription, you hear what I'm playing, you're going to hear how I'm embellishing. I might play something here that I didn't play that was on the paper. But if you look at what's on the paper versus what I played, it's practically the same thing. It's just a simple variation of it, you know. But let's take a look at what the nuts and bolts of it are right now and go through it. So what I'm playing, well, we got 2 eighth notes, then we got the minor third, which is C, on the 3rd fret, 5th string. Now we're going to move up to the major third, which is C sharp, same string. So you got that little movement there, and that's movement. You're going to notice, you know, you would notice that with the bass and the drums. Now we're going to come up all the way to the 7th fret and grab the 5th degree, which is E. Now we're going to play the minor 7th, which is G, and then hit the root 2 frets above it on the 4th string, 7th fret. So we're at the 5th, 3rd, 4th, 7th, 5th, 7th. On the 6th, 5th, let's play that. Let's just play what we would. This is what you would do over the 1 chord, over the A7. We'll do it a little slower. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's what we play over the 1 chord. Now we're going to go to the 4 chord. We're going to play the same exact pattern, only we're going to start on the 5th string at the 5th fret. And you're going to hear me on the track coming down. That's the 4th string, 7th fret, 4th string, 5th fret. Now I'm kind of doing a slur. Not kind of, I am doing a slur from the 7th fret down to the 5th fret on the 5th string to the 3rd fret, 5th string to the root on the 6th string. So now you're going to hear in there that you're going to hear a mess of triplets on 1 measure. So, and that's just all on 1 string, and it's all chromatic. It's on the 4th string, 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, just like that. They're 8th note triplets. So the first 8 measures go like this. 1, if you want to read along and play along with me, please do. But here's the first 8 measures, and this would be beginning on the second 12 bars of part. This would begin on part number 2 on the transcription. So it's below the first 12 bars. So it's the next 12 bars. So it would be this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we played the triplets. Now we're going to the 5 chord. Now I would imagine you noticed that I played something that really seemed almost as if it comes out of left field. And in a manner of speaking, it does. But when you look at it and you play it and you learn it and you understand what it is, it doesn't seem so left field anymore. That's part of the genius and the greatness that Jimmy Rogers had on the guitar. Because here they are on the 5 chord, and he's playing off the 5th, which is B. B is the 5th of E. So he's staying away from the root of E right here. And he's playing B to G sharp, which is the 3rd of E. Playing B, G, G sharp, B, C sharp, E, G sharp. Is that any better, Jason? Okay, good. All right. Don't want it to sound distorted. So let's get this. This is what we're going to play over the 5 chord. So that's B, at the 10th and the 11th fret on the 5th string. We're going to go back to B on the 4th string. We're going to go up 2 frets to C sharp at the 11th fret, and then B at the 9th fret. The same figure. No, we're not. We're going to go, excuse me. And sometimes I played a triplet, sometimes I didn't. I stayed with the line. I was just going with my feeling at that point. But let's get back to the 5 chord. Now we're going to come back down to the 5th fret on the 5th string, and we're going to basically grab the same line that we played earlier against the 4 chord. And now we might do the triplet again. We can do all single notes. So instead of adding to the density of it by playing another chord, which is going to kind of muck it up a little bit, we're just going to play single notes. This is all single notes. Instead of playing F to E, we're just going to play F, single note, E, single note. Alright? Let's try and play it together one time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the part. And I see we got a question here. How do you decide when to go off script and improvise? Well, you decide by establishing first for at least a whole chorus of 12 bars, if not at least 2. I don't usually go off. I wouldn't go off script until I've played it around 24 bars, played around the same basic thing. You know, at least 12 bars. Sometimes, now that I think of it, sometimes I might jump off a little bit after the first 12. Sometimes I'll go for 24 before I start to embellish what it is that I'm doing. It depends on it depends on many. It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on what the song is. It depends on who's doing what. You know, you got your ears open, you're listening to what other people are playing, you know, you're listening to how the harmony, the chords are coming down. There's a lot of things that come into play. So if you're astute and you keep your ears open, you know, and by that I just mean you're listening. You're really listening to the people you're playing with. And this doesn't matter if you're jamming in the house with your friends or you're at a club, which hopefully we're going to be eventually soon again. I'm sure we will. You know, you're playing at an open mic. You know, you might be up there with a bunch of guys that are good, but you don't know them and you've never heard them before. Well, you know, how do you make snap judgments? You make snap judgments by listening, by paying attention to what's going on around you. You don't think I'm going to jump in and I'm just going to start playing this. You know, you listen, you figure it out, and then the more you do it, the faster you get at making that judgment about what it is, when is it time to do this. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the more you do it, the more you listen to other players, the more you listen to the records that contain stuff like this, then you eventually start to get a feel for when you're supposed to go off script and embellish things, you know. What's the best string for playing, best string gauge for playing blues? You know, that's really subjective. I play with medium gauge strings. I've got an 11 on top on all my guitars. The only guitar that has bigger strings is my slide guitar. That's got 13 on the top. But I play with 11s on my guitar, and I like the sound of 11s. Now, you know, some guys, a lot of players don't like 11s because they say their hands aren't strong enough. Well, I've been playing on 11s for a lot of years, so my fingers are strong enough and they can take it. And I like the sound of 11s because they have a little bit more, they got a lot more meat to them than a 9. And they've got, you know, they've got more of a tone and more of a meat than a 9. Some guys, you know, I don't hear that much difference between, some people sound big and meaty on a 10, some guys don't. I don't think that I did. I like my sound, I prefer my sound better on 11s. But that's for the style, that's for the way that I play. That's strictly for my technique and the way I play, you know. Sometimes I dig, you know, if I'm playing blues, I tend to really dig into the groove when I'm playing. I dig in. I'm really thinking about that pocket. I'm really thinking, I'm just really thinking about, you know, even when I'm playing a solo line, you know, if I play something like a, yeah, I'll play a little, give myself a little bit of a backing here. That's what I'm going for. That's the kind of sound that I'm going for when I'm playing, when I'm soloing. And also, now on your rhythm, I just, you know, I mean, I know how to, you know, I know how to get a, you know, I wouldn't really know that I'm playing on 11s by the sound of that, you know. You know, so the tone is there. I prefer a slightly bigger string because for me, I get more tone out of it. I like that sound. That's really what I'm going for, you know. What scales do I recommend for playing blues? Well, obviously you have to know all your minor pentatonics, your major pentatonics, but those aren't the only scales that we think about. I mean, there's you know, other things that you can do that have more, that relate more to jazz harmony, which I'm not going to get into right now. But for the most part, for traditional blues, you're talking about really knowing your minor and your major pentatonic patterns, all 5. And I'm going to get into that in a couple of weeks. We'll go through that again when we talk about arpeggios. But more important, really, more important than actually knowing that stuff is to really know your arpeggios. That's really, because that's the sweetness that comes into the solo. Those are often many times the notes that those are the notes that aren't in the scale that grab your ears when you hear somebody playing. You go, oh wow, what is that? Well, he's playing a chord tone, you know. How do you make the slide? You mean on which part? The chord or the single note? Which part are you talking about? It's a tad vague. Is it on the single note line? That one? Is that what you're talking about? About a slide. How do you make a slide? Well, you get for one thing, you can't look at. There's a reason why you're sliding around. You know, that little phrase that I just played right there is a slur. I pluck the note once, and then I move up a half step, and then I come back down. So you need to be a little bit more specific in terms of, you know, what are you sliding to, what are you sliding out of, that kind of thing. I think we're up to date here on the questions. Okay. So any more questions there? All right. So just in closing, I would say practice this stuff. If you have a metronome, that's great. Really the best thing to do is to practice this stuff with the track, because the track is 100% in time. And time is everything. I can't stress that to you. When it comes to learning how to be a really good rhythm player, excuse me, my allergies are bothering me today. When it comes to playing rhythm, time is everything, and you have to remember that. And I'm going to go back to the very first question that we got today, which was how do you make something that's so simple interesting? Well, keeping time is not a simple thing. Keeping time is an art. And it's just as much of an art as being able to play a great solo, as being able to play a great chord melody. It's as much an art as anything else. And when it comes to playing the guitar, you have to take into consideration the fact that your time has got to be steady. It doesn't have to be like a clock, but it's got to be steady. It's got to be steady enough that you're being supportive and you feel it, and you feel that time in a way that's natural. It breathes. It feels soulful to you when you play. Your time feels soulful, and I know that might sound a little whatever, but it's the truth. If your time is good, then you're playing with soul. You know, you're probably playing something in a soulful manner. Like that, and that was all in time. So that's how you do it. You got to practice with the track. If you can't practice with the track, if you got a drum machine or a drum loop or a really good metronome, just make sure that you're not louder than what you're playing along with. That's the other very important key to practicing this stuff and getting it down. Make sure that if you really hear yourself, first rule of thumb is this: if you really hear yourself, you're way too loud. So if you really hear yourself, the only part that should stand out above everything would be, because that part is serving a function as harmony and rhythm, and it's also kind of a thematic kind of thing. So that would be a little bit louder than the other two parts. in the grand scheme of things. But if you really hear yourself really well when you're playing this, or then you're way too loud. Then you're probably, my guess would be that you're probably playing way in front of the groove. So that's how to practice it. It's been great to hang with all of you this afternoon. Thanks for coming by. I'll be back next Wednesday, same time, 4 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. for those of you on the West Coast like me. And we're going to talk about chords and why chords are so wonderful to know and why it's important to know and have a good chord vocabulary for playing rhythm. So, and particularly blues. So have a great week, practice up, and I'll see you next week.